everybody. Welcome again to Can't Wait Sounds Terrible, the podcast formerly known as Frenemies. We don't want to talk about that, but I can assure you everything is terrible. That's Patrick. We can't wait to get to all of the great things we have to talk about, including Groundhog Day at City Hall and Governor, maybe President Pritzker. But before we do, everybody feeling in the holiday spirit? I think, Eleni, are you feeling the joy of
Oh
this
yeah,
new L?
it's very exciting. Very exciting times, everybody. Can't wait.
Scar, everything. I mean, every day is Christmas in Naperville.
Every day is Christmas. I will say this, we are putting a pause in our home construction project. All the stuff is out so we could at least decorate for Christmas for a little bit of time. So the holiday environment is you can tell I'm bursting with holiday joy because we have Christmas decorations.
There is a lot of joy all across the land and all across this pod. Well, there is no joy at City Hall quite yet. I think things are going not great in the budget talks. So yesterday, Mayor Brandon Johnson met with the group of city council majority, as Fran Spielman pointed out, who are determined to block a corporate head tax, fully fund a pension advance, and avoid borrowing for operating expenses. And they promised to forge ahead with their plan to have an alternative spending plan without those elements. They had a meeting with the mayor and his staff at City Hall yesterday, and 11 of those opposition alders emerged from their 35-minute meeting with Johnson, according to, again, Fran Spielman at the Sun-Times, and said that the negotiating session aimed at averting an unprecedented shutdown of city government was not productive. And the mayor agreed and said that, quote, "Never in my life have I ever seen the level and degree of obstinance coming from a legislative branch." Sounds like a little bit of hyperbole, Eleni?
Yeah, I would say a 35-minute meeting is usually not a great sign that things are going well. I think you said it last week, Dennis, that, we're going to see like a deadline driven at the last minute vote on something to prevent a quote unquote city shutdown. But I still think just the fact that, this potential city shutdown is now looming out there is going to be damaging to the mayor, whether it happens or not.
It certainly wouldn't put Chicago in good company if that is the end result. And I did find the mayor's quote rather amusing in that fact that for many, many years, media pundits called the city council various insulting phrases like a bunch of sheep. So the fact that there is a majority of the membership, not quite veto-proof number, but still a substantial number, who are engaged and involved and making counter proposals, by many would see a good thing, a democracy breaking out of Chicago. But to the mayor, it's obstinance because they will not approve borrowing to fund operating costs and a $33 a person head tax for employers over 500 employees, which is where we're at right now. Speaking of that head tax, over the weekend recently, the Sun-Times watchdogs and WBEZ watchdogs took a look at this head tax, which has been a little bit of a hill to die on for both sides. And the story went back over the history in the early 70s when the head tax was first passed, by the way, under the first Mayor Daley, and pointed out that, and back then it was only $4 per head. It was a smaller number of employees that would qualify. So there were more employers paying it over more broader part of the economy, but $4 a head tax per month. And even Mayor Harold Washington, who was viewed as a progressive, tried to get rid of it at one point. It finally was slashed by former Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who called it a job killer back then. But the Sun-Times looked at this and said that the evidence is really unclear. In fact, the way the Sun-Times put it was a WBEZ analysis, and this is in an actual newspaper. It's a good thing they don't tax newspapers any more than they do already. A WBEZ analysis of city tax data and publicly available economic data reviewed by 4 economic and labor experts found a lack of evidence that Chicago's previous head tax or its repeal is to blame for job loss or growth in Chicago. Quote, it's hard to assign any kind of causation to the head tax, said an economics professor at Santa Clara University School of Business. So is the head tax much more of a symbolic fight than it is anything else?
Absolutely, and it's a symbol for how we want to attract and market our community, our region to the world, and the perception of taxing folks. The ads write themselves. The recruitment campaigns to lure other communities and investment are there, and that's why the aldermen or the alders and the others that are fighting this. We've seen this story before. It's occurred. We've lost titans of industry have decamped to Miami and elsewhere. And it is literally the nickel and dimed to death. This is the dime of death for the city's pro-business reputation. There's already a worker tax, right? You pay to park. Isn't that at 32%? There's a job tax. You pay to order anything at lunch. There's a tax. There's a tax. Everywhere there's a tax. So, this is just one of these. It's the cherry on the top. I could keep going with things, but it's this perception issue, and it will be used against the city in recruitment campaigns. And that is why it is a hill to die on. That's a major problem. And does anyone think if we only taxed these employees at $33 a month for the 500 employees, then everything's going to be fixed? No.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that time and time again, and it doesn't matter what the number is. It's back to the point that it's symbolic. That's really what it all comes down to. So, no one wants that on their campaign trail, and doesn't matter. Again, doesn't matter what the number is. It's always going to be opposed.
It's a very sticky idea for sure. Just by virtue of the fact that you are locating yourself in Chicago, we're going to tax you as a starting point. So this budget battle, the stakes are really high, so high that Greg Hinz came off of his fishing pier in his semi-retirement and wrote a column in Crain's pointing out that for in just a few weeks, this is maybe the most consequential period for the city of Chicago since, as he put it, World War II. The question, will city council members and Mayor Brendan Johnson be able to reach compromise on the proposed 2026 budget, or will Chicago take a huge step down the road of fiscal irresponsibility that Detroit trod a few years ago? Right now, the outcome is too close to call. Some good actually will come out of this mess if the city finally agrees on a new governance paradigm in which the 50 alders do their jobs rather than merely taking orders from the 5th floor of City Hall. But at least an outside possibility exists that a stalemate will prevail and the city will enter the new year without a budget, a step which would endanger not only vital services, but the city's already precariously low credit rating, its ability to borrow at reasonable rates, and its economic future. So he used the D word, guys.
That's That's going somewhere. And Eleni lived through it. If you want some court-ordered supervision of public service spending,
I already have some, but
yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just think this is going to have long lasting damage, whether it happens or not. Just this looming government or city shutdown that we haven't seen in, I don't remember what the number was, how many decades, is going to hurt him significantly.
Well, meanwhile, in the county building, there's a renewal of the universal basic income. And Governor Pritzker was asked whether he was for the universal income as well. So the universal income provided $500 a month in no strings attached cash to 3,250 low to moderate income families in the county. They launched this experiment in 2022 with the post-COVID federal recovery dollars, which is now rolling away. And the Tribune editorial board points out that when Governor Pritzker was asked if he was favoring a statewide version, he laconically, uncharacteristically so, responded, no. And the trip said Pritzker rightly recognizes Illinois isn't in a financial position to dole out statewide nice to haves. Of course, Cook County isn't either, but that ship has sailed.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what positives come out of this potential presidential run because, there's a difference when you're running a state and when you're trying to run for national office. That is just going to be a little bit of a shift from what, maybe he'd be pushing normally, that he's going to take a step back on that one because of other aspirations. And obviously, I think we all believe that we continue to see steps in that direction for him.
So funny that you should mention that, Eleni, because the Washington Post, maybe you were just reading your Washington Post, just featured Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, the Democrat testing the appetite for a leader from the 1%. And it focused on Governor Pritzker's potential run for president and also the fact that he's running for the Democratic nomination in a Democrat Party that has really taken aim and gotten some traction, taking some aim at the billionaires who make up the 1%. Most recently, of course, New York Mayor Mamdani, but many others in that faction. And the Post said, quote, left unsaid by Pritzker that day in August at the state fair, he is the wealthiest office holder in the United States other than Trump, as a scion of the Hyatt Hotels family with a personal fortune worth $3.9 billion, according to Forbes. For years, Pritzker has bankrolled an array of liberal causes and his own political career at a nearly unrivaled clip, pouring more than $508 million to state and federal elections since 2015, including at least $348 million for his campaigns. But here he's got, Bernie Sanders and AOC and Mamdani saying there's no such thing as a good billionaire, Patrick. So he's got to lead a party that starts with a distrust of wealthy people like him.
My favorite part of that article was the rank and file person, I believe, that said, maybe not all billionaires are bad people.
Yeah,
Like,
that was I saw that.
okay. We're just admitting that this doesn't quite this demonization of successful people isn't quite the right approach. But then also my other favorite aspect of that, and you just read it, was remember when the Washington Post was telling people Donald Trump wasn't a billionaire? But now J.B. Pritzker is actually just not as wealthy as Donald Trump. It's amazing how all of these things, billionaires aren't bad, and Donald Trump is in fact a billionaire, even though that was in dispute for several years as a reason to oppose him. It's an amazing contortion of we've talked about identity politics before on the podcast, but we'll call this class politics, and it's gonna be like 28 is gonna be wild. It's just
Well,
the whole thing is gonna be nuts.
he certainly was able to add to his bottom line through various activities as president of the United States. So that turned out to be good for business for Trump Inc. Eleni.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've seen that billionaire rhetoric here in Illinois, even with our billionaire governor. Many of the, Democratic allies and groups, have capitalized on that messaging. And it'll just be interesting to see if there's ever a like rift between them. There has been, but I think the most that he's ever taken issue with was when Stacey Davis Gates was really pushing that billionaire narrative against him. But we have seen other unions with the billionaire messaging here in Illinois, and it'll just be interesting to see, how far that gets taken.
So speaking of billionaires, another billionaire came through and talked to the Chicago Economic Club several days ago. Uh, Los Angeles Laker great Magic Johnson, also Michigan State University great Magic Johnson, one of the best point guards, a guy who really redefined the game in a big way, and of course, accidentally became an activist for the HIV positive. But in the meantime, at his speech to the Economic Club, he talked about how he became, in his own right, separate and apart from his athletic achievements and being part of the Dream Team gold medal basketball team and playing with Barkley and Jordan and all of those great players. He's become a billionaire business owner. And as a player, he told some stories of, for example, seeing the chairman of Starbucks sitting in courtside seats. And so he went over with a piece of paper and a pen to exchange phone numbers with Howard Schultz so that he could follow up with him and talk to him and learn how he built such a great business. And it was fascinating to hear how eager he was to learn about business. And one of the things he said is that whenever he travels around the country, he tries to get to know his customer base if he's looking to invest there. And he has had a number of successful investments in Chicago, including owning several Starbucks franchise here. And he says he always tries to meet with the local mayor. And so he did the same on his visit through Chicago. And he did a Twitter post for the mayor, maybe doing him a solid, in which he said that, let me quote that exactly. I went to meet with Mayor Brandon Johnson. I love the job he is doing in the city. He put 31,000 young people to work in summer programs. He's doing a good job keeping people safe and bringing down homicide numbers. And we had a great discussion and some pictures of Magic and the mayor hanging out, being a couple of sports-loving bros. So A.D. Quigg of the Chicago Tribune quickly got in on the Twitter discussion and said, flashback to 2015, Magic was a big campaign supporter of Mayor Rahm Emanuel and won a Chicago Public Schools deal via Sodexo Magic for outsourced janitorial services, which the unions did not love at the time, but which made Magic a magical amount of money. And so apparently there's a lot of magic to Magic Johnson, but it doesn't seem like Mayor Johnson has quite been able to tap into that magic, Eleni.
I did love the there was someone who posted the new Mayor Johnson, which made me laugh. Yeah, it's an interesting. I personally did not know of Magic Johnson's business profile until reading about it this week. Um, but yeah, I mean, maybe they could do a switcheroo on the next ticket.
Good.
No one would
And he
even know
won't
the
have to
difference.
change any of the signs really, like at
Yeah,
O'Hare or
I
still
mean,
Mayor
I think
Johnson.
it kind of works out great for him.
He's built a great business empire, but he may not have totally done his homework on at least how Chicagoans feel about keeping citizens safe. Although arguably the rate is down. It just seems like the homicides have gotten worse. Um, also getting worse is, according to the owner of a popular establishment, Beat Kitchen, and this is where Patrick and I probably get canceled. So it's been nice knowing you. Hopefully, Eleni can host the
Awesome in
Can't
this segment.
Wait.
Appreciate it.
Can't,
Yeah.
can't wait podcast moving forward. The owner of Beat Kitchen said the city of Chicago forced him to lose the restaurant's Chicago Riverwalk space because of race-based discrimination during a lease renewal process in a federal lawsuit that was just filed. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how that gets played out. It immediately went quite viral. It's sort of the zeitgeist of the times of, let's line up on our opposing sides and just, accuse the other of the worst. We'll see. There's been a long history of lawsuits over racial preferences in Chicago, and it's unclear to my. All I know is what I read in the newspaper.
That's right. I mean, I think when we started a little bit earlier on the head tax, and we saw this somewhat play out virally over the lawsuit over the Bally's investors, and that was quickly amended and changed to allow other folks to get
That's a
in.
good point.
But that case attracted significant notoriety in all of this, and so me being the furthest thing from an attorney, I would hope quickly before significant resources are expended on this that they could find a great spot along the Riverwalk for this entrepreneur to resume a business and life could move on. But otherwise, this narrative will continue, and it's unfortunate. Here is someone wanting to invest in Chicago to operate a great business, and not what I would want if I were to be in the mayor's shoes.
So speaking of federal court, just going to segue out of this so that we quit while we're ahead.
Yeah, I'm doing great here. I'm just saying.
He's like, my name Bennett, I ain't in it.
You literally
so-
took a water during the segment. She was like, "I gotta hydrate here, boys. You have fun with
Yeah.
it."
She's going to watch us talk ourselves into trouble. So, former U.S. Attorney, former Chief Judge of the U.S. Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, Judge Bill Bauer, died at 99 years old. And Crain Chicago Business had a really terrific obit on someone who, though he seems to be, several generations away from you young whippersnappers on this podcast and many of our viewers, because we're really trending with the millennials. He actually kind of set a course of history for the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. He was one of the first really activist white-collar prosecutor U.S. attorneys. He kind of took the job of U.S. attorney somewhat grudgingly, and then he recruited a law professor and lawyer named Jim Thompson. And Jim Thompson and he recruited Sam Skinner and later Dan Webb. And that coaching tree, if you will, continued to grow. Jim Thompson, of course, became the longest serving governor in the state of Illinois and spawned a generation of statewide leaders. And Judge Bauer was, started off as all sorts of, worked his way through school, doing all sorts of blue collar jobs, served in the military, drove a taxi while he was in law school. I had the great pleasure when I was going to night school at DePaul Law that he was one of our professors for advanced criminal procedure. And I was coming off a rocky semester where I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get through it, juggling work and school. And he really got you fired up because the cases we were reading, he was involved in about half of them from the 60s and 70s and the 80s and the 90s, either as a lawyer, a prosecutor, or a judge. And one of the most humorous things about him was come around finals time. And, back then, and maybe this is going to happen again in the era of AI, but we used to get blue books that you filled out by hand in class during the hour and a half or 2 hours that were set aside for final exams. And normally, the way to get yourself to a halfway decent grade was just keep filling those blue books until the timer goes off, right? And Judge Bauer had a different approach. He said, a word about our finals. I'm the chief judge of the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. Some of the greatest lawyers in the city come before me. As much as I appreciate you and love you all as students, I am not interested in your deep legal reasoning. I'm going to give you 4 questions. You're either going to know the answer or you're not. And you're going to give me a 1-sentence answer to these questions. And I was pretty freaked out by this because I had, up until that point, taken the approach that it's best to baffle with my bullshit rather than to dazzle with my brilliance. So I studied up, and he asked, 3 or 4 questions, and miraculously, I knew the 1-sentence answer to all of them, but I had been so trained to that point to being in that room until the end of the time and when the proctor says time's up and to keep filling blue books that after I had, I don't know, maybe 2 pages with a total of 4 sentences written down, I was completely paranoid. So I just kept going back over the first page and the second page and double checking the question. I look around, we're 30 minutes into the final exam for which there was 2 hours budgeted, and it's me and the proctor. It's the only people left in the room. So I'm like, oh, I guess this is it. And I turned it in, and I wound up getting, I remember what I got because it didn't happen a lot. I got an A in that class. And Judge Bauer was a true character and did a hell of a lot for the law and for his community. And that old school approach is sadly missed. It was a long story.
I believe there's a statue of the distinguished judge over at County Farm Road in Wheaton.
No kidding. I haven't been out there in a while, but he would certainly deserve it.
Yeah. Yeah, Schillerstrom made, I believe, a point of making that happen a while ago. But I think Bob was. I remember years ago, as you mentioned, all these folks, right? And it's the downstream folks because you mentioned all the titans of the legal industry that really helped build Illinois or Chicago's prominence in national legal work. But there were a lot of other folks downstream, I think, even politically, that met with that culture and were inspired to service in the 70s and 80s, and then they became somebody in 2000 and all of that. So a true giant.
Well, he will be missed.
And he was also semi-retired, right? And he was still working. How do you semi-retire for 30 years?
I mean, it's a job for life. It's a job for life. All right, Producer Grace, it's time for that time of day. It sounds terrible. I do have something I want to talk about. I don't know if either of you are eager to talk about terribleness or if you need me to get your creative juices flowing.
Go ahead. Can't wait.
It sounds terrible.
I've gotten countenance from the Queen of Terribleness. All right, so this may have been a story that caught my attention for a certain certain reason, another Washington Post story, not about our great governor of the great state of Illinois. Uh, Here's why your hair turns gray and what you can do about it by the Washington Post. A 2020 study in the journal Nature found that, and this is what concerned me the most, found that in mice, stress appeared to cause a loss of melanocyte stem cells, which is what gives our hair its coloring. When the sympathetic nervous system, also known as the fight or flight response, was activated, those stem cells seemed to basically proliferate and differentiate and migrate away from their home, which then turns your hair gray. So stress causes gray hair. I mean, it's an alibi.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't know because my hair's looking great.
I mean, there's
Never
not a
had
gray
gray hair
hair
in my life.
in her
Never
head.
had gray hair in my life. Don't know what you guys are talking about.
Did
Patrick,
we
I think
need-
maybe I think it's because Lenny doesn't experience stress, she gives stress.
It's true.
But did we need a study on this? Like, oh, you don't say. Oh, that's shocking information. The people conducting the study, I bet their hair is as pure as Eleni's, oh, we got a grant to study if
Yeah.
stress leads to gray hair. We should probably run this one to ground. It's been hotly debated for years.
Well, it shows that maybe Doge was onto something, but at the same time, in this era of artificial intelligence, at least we can still employ the mice. So don't kill the job. Respect the
How much
game.
were they getting paid per hour for that study?
Yeah.
Is we need to know.
That's
Well,
true.
they were in Illinois. They benefited from the minimum wage, so at least 15. Maybe they were guaranteed a basic mouse income as well.
What's terrible? What's terrible in you guys? I mean, I'm just thinking about all the stress that we have.
Speaking of stress, it came out late, like just before deadline. The state's power study came out, and in totally shocking news, ain't going great. Is the summary, caused, of course, by our policy of retiring generation assets on a predetermined schedule rather than based on need. So I think in the coming months and years, we're going to continue to see a lot of energy expended on energy policy in the state of Illinois, but there will be those that make boogeymen out of the new era of cloud computing. When I think from my brief read of this 220-page report, usually when you take supply offline in a period of rising demand, things don't go so well. But what do I know? I somewhat slept through economics.
That's terrible. How about
Yeah.
you, Queen of Terribleness?
I would just go with, well, it's a mixture of things, but I'm going to go with Spirit Week. So I don't recall that we ever had Spirit Week at school outside of for like an assembly. But tell me why I have 5 days of crazy hair day, dress as a snowman, evil elf requirements for every single day of this week. That is already such a hard week for parents in general, to get all the Christmas stuff done, get preparations for childcare if you have a job, that you don't get a 2-week vacation in the middle of the holidays as well. And they have these spirit weeks now that are just an absolute joke. And they're truly it makes me want to homeschool. So we don't have to do it anymore. But on
And
the flip
Eleni's
side,
homeschooled.
I can't imagine I would ever be qualified enough to homeschool anyone, let alone a child, in today's age.
It's
This is
definitely
100.
like the Dino Spirit Week, then, Patrick.
Yeah, this is 100% true. Like right, they then want you to wear buy the shirts that say the school's name. Okay, that did not happen in my elementary school existence because I went to a school named after President Buchanan. Not a lot of spirit for the man ranked pretty much right there at the bottom of the list of presidents. We got to get that Buchanan pride running hot. We named
You can't
your
hide that
school after
Buchanan
your
pride.
school. Yep. No
The best
spirit for me
sports
growing
sector.
up either. I mean.
Well, beatings will continue until morale improves, I think is what the takeaway from Spirit Week should be. That forget about the Spirit Week, kids. Study up for your standardized tests. Hey, I'm going to be continuing to live a stress-free life to try to make up for many lost years. And that sounds terrible. If it's terrible, we can't wait for it. And we thank you for joining us. That's Patrick. That's Eleni. I'm Dennis. Producer Grace. We'll see you next time.